Hi, Sean Durham here again, and I hope you're doing well. Today I just wanted to talk a bit more about street photography and what happens on the street when you're using your camera in manual mode. It's always up to you. If you want to use automatic, do that. But I always find that half the fun, a lot of the fun, is using the manual mode and developing that skill and mindset of being able to control the image that you get when you're looking at something on the street. So when I go out, I tend to go out and walk down the street, and I want to get my camera out as quickly as possible. And just like everybody else, I'm going to walk out of my home and be in my own neighborhood. And sometimes I always think, well, just get away from the neighborhood and go somewhere else, because I do like the surprises of new places or places I don't go to too often. But I tend to sort of go off into the center of the city. But sometimes I'll get the camera out immediately and just take a shot of something and see what's going on with the light. And that's a test shot. And it's probably the only shot that I'll stop and look at, analyze a little bit about what sort of light is coming through if I've got the shutter speed at something like 1 in 2/50th or 1 in 500. Because I want that, I want that sharpness and that speed. And my problem is that I also want depth of field, because I like to develop a composition with structures around it. I'm always out there on the street looking at architecture, structures, doorways, things like this, and long perspectives. And so that does mean that I want to include that in there. And the deeper the depth of field, the more texture I'll get into the depth of what I'm looking at. I don't want it to be blurred. Very occasionally I'll set it on something like 2.8 or 1.4, 1.8, and I might want to just get some photos of people close up, crowds, heads bobbing about, or colourful hats and things like that. But otherwise, I'm very often working with an f-stop of f8 to begin with, and just see what that brings me when I'm on something like 2/50th of a second with my shutter speed. Because it shows me more clearly what I'm looking at, you know. And of course, depending on the day, and we're in the middle of winter now, it's going to be a bit dull and the light recedes quickly, clouds come over and everything changes dramatically. Here's the thing, why have a fast shutter speed? Quite simply because you want to capture the action in a very sharp way. Nothing wrong with some blurredness in action. It's actually very good. I really do like shots where figures are moving around and the backdrop that you're using is rock solid and sharp, but the figures are slightly blurred or even very blurred. It's very artistic. And you know, you mustn't forget that street photography can only be but one thing, and that is creative photography. What's the point otherwise? You know, working like an artist, you're using a camera as your medium. What you're doing is creating very enjoyable images to look at. I would easily, in the middle of a shoot, I would be sort of moving around and things like that, and for some reason I might think I really actually would prefer my shutter speed to be lower. And it could be one of two reasons. One, I do want a bit of blurredness. Secondly, it could be the light is just too difficult to work with, especially if it's getting close to dusk. And here in Berlin, honestly, dusk at this time of year can kick in at about 2 o'clock. I know officially that's not it, but it's, you know, if you're at home and it's 2 o'clock, sometimes you have to put the lights on so you can see. Imagine what it's like out on the street with a camera and you try to get good shots. And so I might think, okay, I'm going to change tack here with my point of view, and I'm going to start taking shots at 1/60th of a second, and I'm going to look for people or cars maybe, or cyclists or something like that with a nice backdrop where things are moving quickly. And that way, just see what I get. Experimentation. It's always about experimenting, you know. And if, like me, you can be a bit stubborn and you keep thinking, well, I want to keep it up around f8 or maybe even bang it up to f14 and it's dull. And then I have to get the ISO and bang that right up to probably 6,400. Then I want my shutter speed at something like, you know, 160 or something like this, or 200 if I can get it there. And then, you know, I'm really working against myself there in dull weather, very, very dull weather, and it's a bit of a problem. But I get worried if I bang the ISO up too high that I'm going to end up with noisy shots. Because one thing I don't do when I'm on the street is edit. I don't stop and take a look at each and every shot I took because I know for a fact stuff is passing me by. And there's this thing about consistency in what you're looking at and what you're observing. And so you should build that habit of walking, looking, or stopping and waiting because you found a nice sort of structure somewhere and you're looking at it and you think it's beautiful. It gives you perspectives or lines to look at. And all you need is somebody to walk through a doorway or walk past a doorway. Or you need some people to just sit down somewhere on a bench that is very close to a very interesting structure, and you're going to get yourself a great shot. So when that happens, you know, you've got to think about, do you need a slower shutter speed, or are you waiting for somebody to just drift by very slowly? And you could have it on 1/60th of a second in dull weather, and you could have your f-stop at f8, and maybe ISO bring it back down to somewhere around 800 or 600 or something like that, and you might get away with it. Don't forget that, you know, when you're in post-processing, if you're a beginner, and that is that you don't want shots that are blown out. Blown out shots are where there's way too much ISO or too much light, and because your shutter speed is very low, 1/60th or 150 or something like that, and you may have had ISO set on 400 in bright weather, and you get the shot and you see everything's very bright. You can't do anything with that. You can't bring it back down. You might bring it down in post-processing. You see there's detail, objects there, but what you won't get is texture or detail. It's really that way with digital, is the light is the part that cannot be ever overblown and then brought back down again and saved or rescued. The other way, with shadow, it can be. With film, it's the opposite way around. You know, and once again, understanding what it is you're doing and what you're looking for. You know, if you're a beginner, you're going to be experimenting, and practice will really make you understand what it is you're looking for there on the street. So when we're out there, we can make mistakes, and that's okay. And how do you make mistakes? You take little risks. So you begin to, you know, mess about with your settings and try different combinations, because there are permeations of combinations between the triad of light. There are so many different ways that you can set your camera up in order to get the shot, and you'd be surprised sometimes the slightest difference can make all the difference to a great shot. You might have a good composition and it doesn't look so good, but if you had moved something, you know, the shutter speed or the f-stop, maybe drop the ISO a touch, you may have found that you've got a fantastic shot. That's why what we do is we tend to take 1 or 2 or 3 shots of the same motive, scene there, a nice composition, and we're waiting for the right people to walk past, maybe in a bright red coat or a green hat or something like that, beautiful colour. And you get the shot and you try it one more time with a slightly different combination, and it might work out very well, simply because you experimented. And it's the experimentation that also reveals our mistakes, and mistakes are something really good. You always learn from them. If you don't make mistakes, you ain't learning. It's that simple. You know, when we make a mistake, we can go home then and analyze it later in the photo. We see the mistake in the photo. And so we start to analyze it. And what we're doing is analyzing our actions. And we can think and remember, what did I do? How did I feel at that moment? Because, you know, what we're doing has a lot to do with emotions and feelings and our perception. And so you might have realized that you're a bit frightened, a bit worried, because that's a big thing on the street. In street photography, people are always concerned about how do you get over your fears. The only way to do it is to go into that fear and try it out. You'll be very surprised that what you're afraid of doesn't actually occur. You take a shot of a person walking past and you've been to that point quite scared of doing something like that, and you might just discover they don't even react, they don't do anything. You just took a shot of a figure that made your composition really worthwhile. So anyways, mistakes are something that you can analyze when you go into post-processing and you look, what did I do there? And you might just remember how you felt afraid, or you weren't really in the right position, but something in your brain was saying, maybe I'll get something where I am. But you know, sometimes you think I should have been closer, and you remember that you were thinking that at the time, but you didn't do it. And so it's very often fear that buggers us up really and screws up a good shot. because we're afraid to either take a shot where there are people in it. We're afraid to take a shot because we know we should be closer so we can pick up some really nice lines and texture and colors and things like that, you know, and it's overcoming those things. And if you post-analyze your mistakes and you look at them, you just make a mental note of them. And the reality is, just like everything, you will discover that those little things that hold you back, they're little bad habits, and they repeat themselves until the day comes that you just get over it, you know, or you just say, okay, today I'm going to go downtown and take my camera, do some shots, and I'm going to get close. Is close enough so you pick up skin tones and color and line and texture. That's what I mean. And when you do that, you're not really in anybody's face. And so, you know, you can do that, but you can tell yourself you're going to go downtown, you're going to do that. You're just going to take one step closer, a nice big step. And you discover that nobody's going to punch you in the face nor shout at you. And if they do, it'll be once every 6 months. Berliners, where I live, they're renowned for knowing their rights. I mean, I've had people over the years come up to me and tell me to hand over my camera for inspection, and I tell them, just go and sling your hook. You're not getting my camera. Don't be worried and don't be afraid of people. And it's a good feeling once you get over that and you realize everybody's too busy to worry about me. And that's why I'm one of these people that, you know, I use a Sigma lens. I have Canon lenses. I have a Canon camera, and I use the 5D Mark IV and the 5D Mark II. Both cameras are fantastic. They really are. The wonderful thing is that, you know, they're big and handy. And I like to have this thing, you know, in my hand. I don't want something small and light. I have tried mobile phone photography. I don't find it all that exciting. I'm always having a problem with getting focus on it, and I don't want to be doing this thing, dotting like this, because as soon as I'm doing that, I'm trying to get the circle to appear, and then it's all gone. And I've never had a problem with people looking at me and thinking, the guy's got a massive camera. I don't think they do think that, because my camera looks like a normal size camera. It's not a big deal. I don't need tiny little hidden cameras or anything like this. But the more we do this sort of thing, more we practice, the more we work with manual, everything becomes very muscle memory. And this is the wonderful thing about photography. It's a great thing to do. It's a beautiful practice, and it's very relaxing, even though we all admit that sometimes on the street it can be stressful, but you do come back feeling like you just did something really good. You didn't hang around at home, watch TV, you weren't at work, and you didn't wander aimlessly around the neighbourhood trying to get a kick out of walking around the block, which isn't the most exciting thing in the world in the middle of winter. But when you're out there with a camera, you know, anything can happen and you can get the shot. And there's all types of stuff that, you know, if you're at it long enough, over the years, you get 1 or 2 shots, might be strange events happening in your neighbourhood or in your city. And so all of this develops into habits, and the better you get, the more those habits reveal themselves as very good habits, and the more often you come back with a nice set of shots. And then over time you see that in a period of 12 months you may well have actually you know, taken 1, 2, 3 shots or more that really are humdingers, and you put it into that special folder. But never forgetting that, you know, street photography is not a commercial activity, it's an artistic activity. It's really working your creativity, and it's a lovely feeling to have the brain really, really working. The more you do it, the more you feel that creativity coming out. And I can highly recommend it as a very healthy way of living. You know, it's, don't hold yourself back. Don't be, you know, worried about becoming sort of too artistic or something like that. It's a lovely thing to be able to think deeply about what we look at, our environment, and to appreciate the city we live in by understanding more about it. And I do recommend, as I have in other videos, that, you know, read books about cities and how cities are built and why cities were built in the first place. And it helps you reflect more on what you're looking at. Read a bit about city development and planning, and who are the right people, who are the wrong people to develop it. Helps you understand why one part of your city is totally screwed up or why it never gets developed, that type of thing. And all these things are reflections of the mind about understanding our environment. At the end of the day, you know, photography can take you into many aspects of life, and all types of thinking can help you and supports your venture into photography in a way that it makes you a better photographer. You know, be informed about what you're looking at is the bottom line. Anyway, that's enough from me today, and I just wanted to say hello again and just make a few points about, you know, what makes good street photography practice. I really hope that this winter that you guys are out there taking shots. Whenever the weekend comes for you, have a great weekend. It's going to be Christmas soon, so happy Christmas, and when the new year comes, a happy new year. Enjoy it with your families. I really hope you do.